And we're live.
All right. Hey, everybody. This is Geek and Geeklets, monthly book club discussion. My name's Ben, and we also have...
Hey, I'm Melissa. Sorry, I'm distracted.
And this month we are discussing The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Melissa, any quick thoughts about the book?
It is one of the most whimsical sci-fi novels ever, and I love it for that reason. Just, yeah, that's basically it.
I read this in junior high, and I haven't read it since then, but when I read it at the time, it was one of the first books I thought that really sense of humor. I don't think I'd ever read a book that was funny quite like this one is.
Yes.
So I don't know. It holds a special place in my heart. So there's I wouldn't say it's the deepest book in the world, but interesting things that are going on here. One of the first things I think is the setting in the 70s, but do you think it was dated at all for how long ago it was written?
I kind of don't think so, to be honest, because you're only on Earth for a very short time, and then you're like thrown into this world of spaceships and different planets and exploration. It's not like some of the other sci-fi books that we've read where it's very political. Like when we've read Electric Sheep, and we were talking about how like the two factions were clearly the Soviet Union and the United States. Like I feel Hitchhiker's Guide actually stands up a little bit better because it almost has a Alice in Wonderland quality to it that makes it more about the discovery and the journey.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I totally see that. A couple little things that stuck out to me were or two about digital watches, which are kind of like an anachronism at this point.
Yeah.
A little bit, the book itself of this book that I guess has kind of a video screen in it. I don't know if that is really like incredibly forward thinking or a 1970s version of, you know what I mean?
Right. And now you could be like, well, it's just a precursor to the Kindle. So
yeah.
We ran into that with Ender's Game too, though, when we're talking about the technology and the video games and things like that. So
right.
I think at the time it was a different experience than reading it today, because in the 70s when they didn't have those things, that was so futuristic. Whereas it almost makes the book more relatable to today because we have digital watches, we have technology on our phones and things like that. So I don't know if that necessarily dates it or if it just makes it seem, I don't know, not necessarily futuristic, but definitely still fantasy based or sci-fi based.
Yeah. In a way, kind of like think about a game like Fallout. Have you played those?
I have not, but I know enough of the story.
Yeah, it's kind of like a 1950s what the future is going to look like. So it still seems like the future, but it just seems like a different version of the future, I guess.
Yeah. And you get that a lot in the Victorian sci-fi stuff too. Like the whole steampunk genre entirely. So
I could see that for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So we start on Earth, and we quickly discover that Earth is pretty much the most pointless.
What do they call it? Like, I don't know. I had to give my book back to the library, so I don't have the actual quotes this time. But what did they call Earth? Like, what was the threat level? Like minimal or something?
Oh, yeah. I remember exactly what they said right there, but I have an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet.
Yep. That's Earth.
Which I love that because so many, I don't know. It's just, I think it's just fun that we're reading it on Earth, and in the book that we're reading, Earth is just it's completely pointless.
Yes.
But at the same
time, yeah. It describes,
later in the book.
Yeah, hold on. It describes Earth as harmless, like entirely just harmless. Mm-hmm. But later on in the book, go ahead.
Yeah, but later on in the book, we find out that Earth actually has this incredibly thing behind it, even though almost the entire galaxy doesn't know it.
Mm-hmm. Because Earth was like a really, really elaborate science experiment, right?
Right.
Yes. I actually liked that Earth was just labeled as harmless and was more or less wiped off, because a lot of sci-fi, Earth becomes like the last battlefield, or we're trying to invade these other planets or something like that, where it's super significant and super important. And then this one's just like, no, you're just another planet and we need our superhighway. So sorry. Like that's probably where you were saying like your humor comes in. Hitchhiker's Guide is a really, like, you can't take a lot of it too seriously.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Just the whole reason that they were demolishing Earth, I think, is really great. And it applies on a level that I think is relatable, completely ridiculous, just because that happening with their house, with eminent domain.
Especially when it was written, because wasn't like 60s and 70s when the highway systems were really being developed and overly used. So that probably made it relatable to the people of the time as well.
Right.
And it's also interesting that of all the human beings on Earth to save, it's just some random guy who just happened to know the guy who was like, hey, you need to get off the planet now. It wasn't like some leader or icon or anything. It was just a regular dude who got sent on this journey.
Yeah. So we have Arthur, who's kind of like the average Joe protagonist, and he's surrounded by this bonkers cast of characters.
Oh my God.
I love that Zaphod has two heads and they each have completely different personalities.
Yes. Two-headed characters are fun that way.
And the infinite probability drive seems like such a great plot invention to bring together these incredibly unlikely scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's why. Look at this. This guy is 140. Like, I am a 49.
Yeah. Could you remind me really quick what the infinity drive actually did? Was that what? Because I know there was deep thought, but what was the?
So the infinite probability drive is what basically powers the Heart of Gold spaceship.
Okay.
And it's sort of, I think that probably had an idea of quantum physics because it sort of works on that level.
Mm-hmm.
So the ship spins up to this improbability level, and at that point, the ship somehow exists at virtually every point in the galaxy.
Right. Okay. Yes, that is very much quantum physics.
Yeah, and somehow the ship controls which point that it ends up in.
Okay. Yes. No, that's 100% based on quantum physics, because that's how we know where electrons are, is basically just probability. So yeah, that's fun.
What do you think of the narrators? Just the narrator in general, the perspective.
Oh, was that me? Or was that weird? Okay. Sorry, I got some weird echo thing going on. Yeah. I enjoy the narrator, again, with the humor and the way that it's written is it all leads to this tone of like just a lot of crazy adventures and fun. So
yeah,
I like it.
It's a very jokey narrator.
Mm-hmm.
I love that there are so many
Mm-hmm.
in the telling of the story. I feel like you're kind of in on a joke the whole time, which
Right.
adds.
Mm-hmm. And the dialogue between the characters is really entertaining. Like there's a lot of dialogue that seems kind of pointless and kind of rambly, but it makes it more entertaining, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, he has a really interesting way of describing things. I don't know if you noticed this, but I'm not really sure how to describe this, but when he's making descriptions of things, sometimes he ends in a way you don't necessarily expect it. Like the Vogon ships, he describes them something like they stay in the air in exactly the way that bricks don't.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And but at the same time,
kind of
yeah, go ahead.
It's just, I just think it adds to the humor. It's kind of a humorous way to describe things by putting it on a level that's not necessarily expected.
Yeah, it's almost like a surreal painting, where it makes sense in your brain when you read it, because you're like, okay, that I have a clear mental picture of what you're talking about, but it's not one of the normal things that goes into your brain. Also, it kind of goes along with the idea that Earth isn't significant, but the way that everybody else sees humans in this book is kind of funny too, because they're like, whatever. I'm just looking up some random quotes, which made me think about this, but it's like, one of the things Ford Prefect had always found hardest to understand about humans was their habit of continually stating and repeating the very, very obvious. Like just little quibs like that, that kind of like put you in your place a little bit in this book.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, some of the things that I thought were really funny were the beginning, the whole part with the construction supervisor, where trying to convince him to take their place in front of the bulldozer while they go to drink.
Yeah.
I just love how frustrated the supervisor gets, and just trying to imagine putting myself in those shoes.
Like, we're gonna go over here now. You can figure this out, right? It's all good. Yes. And what about the dolphins? I always thought that was so weird.
Yeah.
So strange.
Yeah. Have you read the other books in the series?
I have not. See, this is where we're opposite, because I read all the Ender's Game books, but I have only read the first one of Hitchhikers.
Okay. I have read the other ones, but I also haven't read those ones since I was in middle school. Mm-hmm. So I don't remember a lot of them, but I think that, yeah.
Well, there is one that's called like Thanks for All the Fish, so I would assume it comes up.
Okay.
But I just remember, like, I remember watching it in the movie theater when this was the movie and just being like, what is going on? This is so silly.
There's a huge musical scene with the dolphins where they're singing "Thanks for all the fish."
Yep.
Another part that I
No, go ahead.
Another part that I thought was really funny, just because of the juxtaposition of what you expect and what happens, is when they're about to be shot down by the missiles, the improbability drive turns the missiles into a whale and a bowl of petunias.
Yep. Yes. But again, that's the whimsy part of this, where it's like just random things are happening and you're experiencing this along with Arthur, who's just like just as confused as you are about it, which makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
But
it is kind of a dark humor to it, though, at times. You know, we've got like entire planet Earth is being destroyed in basically an accident.
yeah.
And Arthur really doesn't seem to know what to make of it at first. But it's so funny that he doesn't really have any emotional reaction to Earth being gone or his parents being gone. But when he thinks about the supermarket or McDonald's, emotionally affected by it.
Right. Well, that's also part of his character, because if I recall, he was kind of a loner anyway on Earth. Like, he didn't have a huge family or a lot of friends or anything. And I mean, honestly, how do you cope with the idea that your entire planet just went obliterated? Like, that is not something that we would ever have to experience or would think of experiencing. But
yeah, it's kind of odd that it seems weird to say out loud that you're affected by something like that, but I think in everyday life you do get more of a reaction to small things that are personal to you than big picture type stuff.
yeah.
So it's probably the most extreme example of that he could have come up with, but it does make sense on that level.
Yeah. And this was a Cold War era book too, where like people did experience, hey, we could be obliterated by nukes and we could experience these things. So
right, that's a good.
There could have been a level of it's going to happen anyway, so there's nothing I can do about it. Let's just pick up the pieces and move on. And then at the end of the book, when we find out about Earth being an experiment run by mice to figure out the answer or the question to life and all that, it's kind of interesting how it's like, oh, well, we'll just create a new one. Like,
yeah,
that's okay. We can just, churn out another Earth and it'll be the same and everything will be fine. What?
yeah. Except they have Arthur, so they don't need to spend all that money.
Right.
I can't remember. Was the plan to rerun the computer program all over again, or just to rebuild Earth for the last 5 minutes?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find out. And again, I had to give my book back. Problematic. Deep thought, talking about 42. I'm just looking through quotes, to be honest. That's what I'm doing. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, either way, I think it was interesting that didn't really go into how they were going to,
I
don't know, like remake every single individual person, because ostensibly every person was part of the program because they were going to use Arthur to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
But they kind of glossed over some of the small details there.
Yeah.
That was probably the darkest part of the book, I think.
What's what?
The idea that they were, instead of the planet again, they were just going to open up Arthur's skull and use his brain without his...
Oh, yeah.
Do it.
I'm reading over that now and remembering. Yes. But again, that kind of gives into this idea that we're insignificant and we're just these test subjects for these rats and these people.
Yeah.
Listen,
what did you think of the meaning of the universe being 42?
I love that. I feel like it's one of the most overused and inappropriately used geek like catchphrases. Like I hear it. I heard it a lot. As a science teacher, I heard it a lot from my students as they were reading this book and when the movie came out and whatever. But you would just hear like, "Oh, 42," but it's not the question; it's the answer to life and everything else. So I feel like it's one of those things that is a really good catchphrase for people who enjoy Hitchhikers to like bond over. I feel like it's one of the things that stuck out the most to the masses about the book. But yeah. I don't know. I don't know what if Adams meant for it to be anything like, I'm really curious what Adams' thought process was behind choosing just a random number.
Yeah, I think humor is just finding the most ridiculous situation, and for the answer to the greatest question to be so silly like 42, I think just fits right in the middle of his sense of humor.
It does, but then it also like is super maddening because you're like, well, then what's the question? Why is it 42? How did you come up with 42? Like, it just draws out more questions.
So we get the question, well, we're supposed to get the question when they open up Arthur,
right?
But instead they escape.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that just make up their own answer question for the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And then they cycle through a couple like times 6. No, that's too obvious.
Yes.
How many roads must a man walk down?
Yes, and that is probably 60s humor because that might actually not make sense to a lot of this current generation if they don't know the song, you know?
Yeah. Dylan, right?
What?
Bob Dylan?
It was, well, I know it from Peter, Paul, and Mary, but it was in that whole era, and they all sang each other's folk songs. But Blowing in the Wind, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew it from Peter, Paul, and Mary because that's what my parents listened to growing up. But I'm thinking a lot of today's generation probably wouldn't get that reference.
I think I know it best from Forrest Gump, actually.
Oh, yeah. Forrest Gump is definitely keeping it alive. That is a great movie.
So after they escape, they I think they're headed for the restaurant at the end of the universe. Is that right?
Yep.
It's kind of anticlimactic, I think.
It is, but again, it fits the rest of the humor of the book. To have this like epic journey and then to end in essentially what is like the universe's like trucker bar or whatever. That's just my image of it. I've always pictured it as like just this rest stop on the way.
Yeah, I'm definitely picturing like a traditional diner type place.
Yeah. But the fact that it's the end of the universe makes it fascinating to me because like they traveled to all of these places and they end up at the edge, which doesn't even actually exist because the universe is constantly expanding. But I feel like for a book that starts on Earth with a bulldozer and a planet being destroyed, ending up in a diner somewhere in the universe is not that far of a stretch.
I read a rumor that Adams ended it that way because he had a history of procrastinating and the publisher sent someone over to his house to collect the draft.
I like that rumor.
Yeah, I don't think it's true, but I can imagine Adams with his sense of humor just letting it proliferate because book.
Yeah, but then the second book isn't the second book called The Restaurant at the End of the Universe?
Yeah, so it is also sort of a preview of sorts, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Although, how much forethought did Adams have into this series? Like when he wrote the first book, did it seem like he was setting it up for future books, or were they all kind of standalone-ish? I don't know anything about this series. Did they always follow Arthur, or did they kind of jump around to other characters? If you remember.
I don't completely remember. I want to say that I've read that he was at least planning for the second one, but I don't know about the rest of the series.
For everything else, there's Wikipedia. Yeah. I'm just curious. That's all.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think that with a book that's that whimsical and off the wall, you kind of get the impression that he's just making it up as he goes.
Right.
But sometimes the opposite can be true, and it takes an amazing amount of planning.
Okay, so Restaurant at the End of the Universe basically picks up where Hitchhiker's leaves off, and it seems to be just as whimsical as the first. And then the rest of them. Yeah, and then it just goes on from there. So I don't know. Oh, hey, did you know Douglas Adams wrote for Monty Python?
I did. Only when I was reading up on some stuff for this chat.
Cool.
But yeah.
I'm not surprised at all.
In there.
He does. It's the same kind of idea.
It does seem like a very British sense of humor to it for some reason. Well,
yeah,
I guess because he's British, but
that would typically make sense. But yes, it seems like the Hitchhiker's Guide does follow Arthur through his journeys. So
okay,
I kind of want to read.
So maybe Arthur is kind of his alter ego for the story.
I don't know if it's so much a plot line as it is like a rambling journey through space and time and in different places. But it's pretty cool. Yeah, it seems like all of these follow Arthur Dent. So
okay.
I need to read the rest of them.
He's a likable character.
He is.
Could follow him through a couple more stories.
Yeah. What do you think about, because you said you read these when you were in middle school.
Yeah.
What do you think would be the best age to read these novels? Kind of like what we talked about with Ender's Game, with reading it as a kid versus an adult. What do you think about this one for that purpose?
I think that middle school is probably a little bit young just because there are so many jokes that would probably go over your head reading it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I guess it depends on the person, because when I read it, I was really ready a funny book like that.
Mm-hmm.
Short, so it was also something that
Sure.
wasn't too intimidating for a younger reader.
Froze.
Are you good?
Yeah, no, you just froze for a second. It hiccuped. I don't know. It was weird.
Okay. But I think that some of the language, and maybe it's because I think some of the language is a little difficult for a younger reader.
You know what? That is true. And sometimes the way that he says things, like I'm just looking at one sentence from a random quote, and it's like, now it is such a bizarrely improbable coincidence that anything so mind-boggling useful could have evolved. Just the way that he uses language, and it's all thrown together in these surreal images, may be a little abstract for younger readers.
Yeah, you really have to focus and follow the sentence through to the end to going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think like 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, like that age range where you're kind of, I don't know, being rebellious and going through puberty and whatnot would be a fun time to read it, because let's face it, the world ends in the first, I don't know, 5 pages, 10 pages. And you're like, okay, this is fun. Let's do this.
Yeah. I think I said that I was ready for a book that was humorous. I think that a lot of younger readers and with books is that in school, almost every book is like really serious. We read all these dramatic things for school. I think it's important to get something that kind of falls in a different genre, you know?
Yes. And since I teach middle school, I need to give a shout out to my English department. They do Shakespeare starting in 6th grade. They read Romeo and Juliet. I know, it's insane. But the way that they start off their Shakespeare unit is with a lesson where they create Shakespearean insults. So for about a week, you just hear a whole bunch of middle schoolers shouting random things at each other in the hallway and laughing hysterically at them, because it's like you hamster liquor. And it's like, what? So they just come up with these random Shakespearean insults. And then when they're going through the story and they actually figure out what's going on, they get so excited into the drama of it that it's really entertaining. But you're right. And in our 8th grade curriculum, there's like a lot of stories that have dealing with death. Holocaust stories are 7th grade. Shakespeare's in all 3 grades. It's a lot of serious and heavy reading. So having something light and fun, like even Ender's Game, can be heavy at times.
Right.
But I feel like the comedy and sci-fi comedy, that doesn't really get old. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's so great, the way that they introduce Shakespeare like that. I've never heard of.
Yeah. And that's like, it gets the kids in like super excited about it, because they're like, oh, okay, so we get to yell insults at each other for 45 minutes. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
As I've gotten a little older, I like Shakespeare a little bit better, because I understand that it's kind of have to see it perform to appreciate it, right?
Yeah.
I just hated that stuff when I was first reading it, because the language was so bizarre.
Yes.
And something like that would have gotten me interested right off the bat.
No, they do a great job of making it like accessible, so that, and it's really funny to hear the kids' interpretations of what's going on in the show, because you'll just hear them be like, all right, so there's this chick and she meets this guy, and then like 3 days later she decides that she loves him. Who does that? Like, they get really upset about things, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
And then they find out that I'm a science teacher who reads books. I'm like, how do you know Shakespeare? I'm like, I read. But yeah, it's really funny. They think of teachers as analyzed. Like, you're a science teacher, you know science. You're a math teacher, you know math. No, we know everything. So it makes it fun. I wish that they did more like fun reading in school. Kids are still reading a lot of comic books. They're still reading a lot of graphic novels and things like that. But I feel like Hitchhiker's Guide, first of all, it's clean. Like, there's a little bit of violence or whatever in parts of it. And I mean, Earth does get destroyed, but it's still a light, kind of happy, whimsical journey type book. So it's nice.
Yeah, it's not, it might be difficult for some readers, but it's not inappropriate for a younger reader, I don't think.
Yeah. And I mean, they could.
Not a lot of.
Mm-hmm. Actually, did they ever? I'm just curious. Hey.
Yeah, there's definitely not a lot
make it a
of sex and
graphic novel.
violence in there.
Apparently, there's a Hitchhiker's Guide graphic novel, which is interesting.
Oh, really? I haven't heard of that.
I don't know. I'm just looking at it on Amazon.
It seems like they do a graphic novel for just about anything that's popular these days.
Yeah, but that also makes it more accessible for the kids.
That's
So,
true. Yeah.
That's good.
I wonder how the sense of humor would translate.
Yes.
It's like based in the wordplay.
Mm-hmm.
It would probably be difficult to reimagine it with pictures.
Yeah. So.
Along those lines, did you see the movie?
Yes, I did see the movie.
What did you think of it?
I thought it did a pretty good job as far as the universe itself went. I like seeing the things visualized on the screen, but as always, when you're watching a movie, you're like, oh, well, that's different than I envisioned it, and that's different than I thought it would be. But I feel like they captured each of the individual worlds really, really well. Yeah.
I also thought that they did a really, really strong job of casting the movie. In particular, I thought it was perfect with oh, his name's not coming to me right now.
I liked Ford. Yeah,
that's most def. Yeah, he was good. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I liked it when it came out. I think that it fell short to me a little bit, but I guess to see those things turned into movies. And I think we talked about that with Ender's Game a little bit too, because that didn't seem like a bad movie, but it was still disappointing.
Well, yeah. I mean, you always get that when you're turning a book into a movie. But as far as like sci-fi book movies go, it wasn't terrible. Like, it could have been a whole lot worse.
Yeah. And I think that they did understand the sense of humor of the book, because I remember times, but jokes in the book, and I think that the problem with a comedy book is that everyone has their favorite joke in it, and if that doesn't make the movie, then there's disappointment there. Yeah,
it's kind of the same thing as with the Ender's Game movie, where there was no Demosthenes and what's his face, the other guy, like that they completely cut out Peter and Valentine from it. But it's like, okay, I understand. It's kind of the same thing with Hitchhikers. It's like, all right, they went with probably the most known and most popular quotes, but then skipped over some really good gems that could have been included.
Right. Right.
So.
I think that just about covers everything that.
I think we did a good job covering pretty much everything.
Okay. You have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts? I would definitely recommend this book as like for younger readers to get a sense of humor and satire. Even though it's a really old book, it's still very, very funny. So.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that's kind of on a different tack for a young reader. And for anyone of any age, I think that completely full of comedy they're probably not rare, but comedy books are hard to come by, and it's really nice to open one up. So yeah, it's a great read.
Mm-hmm. So go read it. Yay!
All right. Is there any specific sign-off thing that we're supposed to do here?
I don't think so. Thanks for joining us. Next month, I believe we're reading House on the Hill, which is going to be a horror book, so completely different. I think that's what we're doing.
Have you started?
I have not. I kind of am waiting for school to be out. So if I stay up all night reading, that's okay. I don't do well with horror, so we'll see how it goes.
I just cracked it, and I was worried because it was written, I think, but it's really good so far. So
awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to starting it. So yeah, we'll see you next month, everybody.
All right, thanks.